What is going on, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. It's time for Nick at Night, my weekly comic book review show. Before we get into that, let's get into the sponsor of this video, JW Storytelling's Kickstarter. Check it out now. Hey everyone, Nick here. Wanted to show you real quick The Legend of Kyyden Prologue from friend of the show, Jesse Wolf. He's got a Kickstarter going on from now until July 5th, and I wanted to show you guys some of the cool stuff they're doing over there, featuring a 24-page standard-sized comic book about a kingdom under siege. We got this amazing cover A. We have a cool hero villain spotlight over on the cover B, and then all those guys that love those villain shots. We also have a cardstock cover C available as well. But guys, go down below. Like I said, I'll have a link down here to the Kickstarter campaign. You can check out some of the interior art, read the synopsis. Seems like it's gonna be a really cool story. I'm excited for backing this one and support our team, Jesse, Noah, and Camillo. But guys, thanks so much. Good luck with your campaign and keep making awesome comics. Welcome back to the review. So let's get into it now. We're gonna go ahead and put our grading scale up. So how this works is when I bring a book on, I'm gonna put it on the grading scale so you can see how they stack up against each other. So we're gonna get into Marvel first. We're gonna start with a book that I was anticipating being a pretty interesting book. So we have SpiderMan India issue number 1. And from what I understand, this is not exactly a first appearance or anything like that. We've seen this character before, but correct me down below if I am wrong about that. So we have Paviter, if I'm not pronouncing that name right, I apologize. We have this Spider-Man character here, SpiderMan India, and he's basically teaming up with Peter Parker and Miles in the very beginning of this. And there's a very cool new villain that Miles actually described as the multi-headed, multi-limbed Mysterio. And they have a pretty cool, interesting battle in the beginning of the issue here. The art style is pretty interesting too. It's got this white haze to it. So I didn't quite know exactly what was going on there. Everything just seemed really bright, and maybe they're trying to, I don't know, get us an idea of what the land would look like or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But I just remember when I was flipping through this, I'm like, wow, everything's really bright. They have this whitewash kind of on everything. And so I thought that was interesting. But this Spider-Man is very similar, obviously, to the Peter Parker that we all know and love. He has an Aunt May. He's doing stuff for the community. He's stopping people from robbing drugstores. He's going around. He's having difficulties at school and relationships, whatever. And he actually has this mad scientist, very familiar kind of a story here. He has this mad scientist and this evil guy in his town who's running a lot of these experiments, trying to push people out of their homes, things like that. And he gets wrapped up into this whole thing, trying to, dig in a little bit, seeing what's going on. But at the same time, he becomes a victim of this weird experiment. And we have the unleashing of a very cool villain that we're going to see in this world. But again, the art style is pretty interesting. It's got some detail to it. It's really bright and vibrant, which was nice. I remember reading this issue and just being okay, I don't care, because it's the same kind of story over and over and over again. We've seen it so many different times with the different Spider-Man out there, so no real big impact for me on this issue. I don't know, what'd you guys think? Next book we read from Marvel was Al Ewing's Black Panther issue number 1, and I gotta be honest, I wasn't really planning on reading this book, but I went ahead and picked up a copy and I started reading through it and everything, and I was like, okay, so we have Black Panther basically somewhat exiled. He's kind of a foreigner in his own land at this point. The cool thing is this is actually exploring other cities within Wakanda. It's not just the city or the palace and stuff like that we're mostly familiar with inside of the MCU. This is actually going out into the more urban areas, and there's kind of a day in the life of those people over there, and it really kind of shows their perception of Black Panther, of the king at this point. He feels like a foreigner in his own country. He's got a lot of retribution things he's working through right now, and he's making his presence felt in this city because, like any other city, there's a lot of corruption in here too. So it's basically about him trying to get more familiar with a place that he hasn't really been before. The art was okay. I felt kind of bored reading through the issue, to be honest with you. It didn't really grasp my attention. Didn't really like what I was reading a whole lot. I don't think I'm going to be reading them going forward, but what'd you guys think of Al Ewing's Black Panther number 1? Did it resonate with you a lot more? Did you expect it to go in this direction? Let me know in the comments. Next issue is Jed MacKay's Moon Knight issue number 24, and for the most part, I like the Moon Knight run. I do feel like now we're getting into, 24 issues right now, and I want it to go somewhere. I want to feel like we're heading in a meaningful place. We're building towards something. And I feel like we're heading in that direction overall, but it feels like so many of these issues are just these one-shot issues that in themselves is really cool, but where's our bigger, grander story taking us? And I haven't quite figured all that out yet. I was hopeful when we got into this whole vampire scene and when Blade was coming around and things like that, I can kind of see where we're going. But we've kind of gotten away from that a little bit, and we have all these essentially one-off stories, but the main theme seems to be him kind of building his ranks, getting the Moon Knight mission back together, stopping the bad guys from terrorizing people at nighttime, things like that. I just need a bigger, broader picture to really sink my teeth into. But I mean, if you're into like one-shot books with, small connecting stories here and there, I think you're going to love the Moon Knight run. Art's fantastic. Everything's great. This issue was, no exception at all. He's actually kind of trapped in this dream state a little bit right now. There's this powerful anti-villain that we kind of figure out towards the end of the book, manipulating Moon Knight's mind, putting him in these places. And since he has DID, he doesn't exactly know if these dreams are like hallucinations, something like that. And he's actually giving Moon Knight and his alter egos everything that they ever wanted. And he kind of puts the pieces together and gets out of that dream state. But again, with that said, I need a larger connecting story. Not quite getting it with this. What'd you guys think? Next book we read, it was actually from DC. We have Superman Lost, issue number 4 from Priest. And I enjoyed this issue way more than the last issue because it was a little bit more straightforward. And I'm definitely getting like that Supergirl, Tom King vibe from this overall story, which I think is really cool, and it's grabbing my attention for sure. But now we're, 4 issues in, and I'm trying to see what the broader picture might be. In the very beginning, we had this Justice League-sized event. We had essentially this black hole, something like that Superman was sucked into, and through some time dilation, time warping, he was gone for 20 years from his perspective, but he was only gone for, a matter of seconds or something like that for us. And so he's kind of retelling the story now, in a way, about what he was doing in space for that 20 years and all the, inner thoughts that he had, the different creatures he came in contact with, the different worlds, how he intervened when he saw injustices, things like that. And it's really explored inside of this issue. And I really like the storytelling. I like the art. I like that this is a very Superman thing to do. It's like, yeah, I got to get home. I got to get to my family and my friends and Earth. But I can't just go there. I can't ignore the injustices I see. I need to intervene, and that's what we got inside this issue. So very well executed, I thought. Really liked Superman Lost, issue number 4. Check it out. All right, we're still in DC. We have Dawn of DC Green Lantern issue number 2, and I liked issue number 1. It was essentially Top Gun in comic book form, which fine. It had a lot of humor. Hal Jordan was pretty cool. He was doing a lot of interesting things. It was full of excitement and stuff. He's back, right? It was this big thing. So where do we go from here? It's basically a continuation of the It's Back, I'm Back story. And he's just kind of flying around, trying to save the day, doing some cool stuff, running into some old allies, things like that, some old friends, getting some advice. And then he has to go back and play con man to get back into the people's lives that matter to him, like Carol. So he's just doing whatever he can. Some funny things, some tongue-in-cheek moments, things like that. He's kind of using his powers in a very interesting way to stop some crimes. That was really cool. The visuals are great in this issue. This issue actually builds directly into the next DC event that we're going to be getting into. I think it's like Terror War or something like that. It builds directly into that from what I can tell. So it's going to be kind of cool to see how we transition in. And I'm anticipating a lot of DC books heading in this direction if they haven't already. But maybe that's just me interpreting it wrong. But it feels like it's heading in that direction. So Green Lantern, if you're a big fan of the character and everything, I think you're going to love the vibe, the feel, the humor, and just the excitement inside the book. But if you haven't been a Green Lantern fan, or maybe you haven't read a whole lot, it's probably going to be like, okay, what else you got? What else is going on? That was kind of my takeaway from Green Lantern issue number 2. Let me know what you guys thought down below. All right, dipping into the indies, we're going to go into Something Epic issue number 2 from Simon Kudranski, and this book is insane. I love this one. This was actually my pick of the month the previous month for issue number 1, and issue number 2 comes in very, very strong as well. First off, with these awesome homage covers, which I love that he's doing that, but there's these like silent panels in here. There's these little nuances that really show the emotion and everything that's going on in the story at that time. The opening scene is a little bit of a progression on like the mother's situation. There's a lot of things that were kind of hidden behind the dialogue. We were being told a story from this child's perspective about his overactive, in a way, imagination. But there's this thing going on with mom in the background that really comes to fruition at the end of issue number 1, and it jumps right into that in issue number 2. And it was like very, very emotional and very impacting, I thought. So, we get these like amazing 2-page spreads right here, just showing you this like dark reality that we're in right now. Mom is very, very sick, terminal, and the child's doing everything he can do just to kind of hold things together. And he maintains his quirkiness, his attitude and things like that when relatives come in to check on him and everything. And I think that's really interesting. Maybe he's using everything as like a defense mechanism. I think we're going to explore that potentially in a little bit. The other thing really great about this book is the pacing. So yes, there's moments where there's lots of dialogue, but I just eat that kind of stuff up. But then there's also these moments where it's relatively silent. He's just kind of walking through the hospital and comes across depiction of Jesus on the crucifix here. And there's a lot of cool layers between the storytelling at that moment and the visual depictions too. So very well executed, I thought there. We get some cool battles in here too from like this Rhino Black Bolt combination kind of dude, I guess, and like a Vegeta character. And I thought that was really awesome. There's some interesting repercussions to that battle as well, and maybe some things were sparked in this kid's mind as far as how he needs to handle situations, something like that, because he actually decides to muster up the courage to take care of a situation that he might have otherwise ignored in the past, and he actually acts out against these things that he sees in his reality, I believe for the first time. I think all the other interactions have been him essentially ignoring these different illusions, things like that. But this, I believe, is his first time where he actually interacts with them, and it's a really cool revelation. And I think we're going to look into that, obviously, a lot more in the future. Very, very cool. You know the kind of art style you're going to get into. Very moody, very dark, very detailed, and very impactful for this kind of story. So something epic, guys. You got to be checking it out. All right, we're going to jump into a book that was on a lot of people's radar. We have Void Rivals issue #1 from Robert Kirkman. So this book kind of was under the radar for a very long time, and I think it was maybe the week that it came out that a spoiler came out about what is inside this book. Now, I'm not going to go over what that spoiler is, just in case you haven't read the book yet, but I will say that everything else around it is basically around these two different warring factions out in space. They both crash land on this moon, and they're kind of still at each other's throat despite them being completely disconnected from their home bases, their home worlds. Most of their technology, their ships, their resources are all shot to hell, and yet there's still rivals in the void. And so it's a pretty spot on naming of this series as well. What's really cool is they basically realize the situation that they're in, and they kind of throw aside their differences and they're like, listen, we have to actually team up to survive this situation that we're in right now. Let's pool our resources together and get things going, which leads them into going around the different areas of the planet and discovering other things that maybe they can use to help get them off of this planet. And they run into some pretty interesting things along the way. Very cool storytelling, lots of twists and turns. Loving this one. Very cool surprise. Check it out. Ronnie Barnes on Monarch issue #5, another series that I'm absolutely loving right now, and I definitely think you should be on this one as well. First, the art style. It's really interesting. I love it so much. It's got this weird grittiness, this texture to it, this like darkness to it. And it's also got this very emotional, impactful story. You can even see it on this cover here. It's essentially a wraparound in a way that kind of expands this shot of our main character here, protecting one of the people that he loves right now. So basically he was a seed that was sent down from an alien race, meant to, prepare the planet for their eventual arrival. He actually fell in love with the people that he was around in this foster care system. And now he's doing whatever he can do to protect these people and essentially this planet from the invading aliens for which he came. And so we get a really cool explanation about how he's able to do this, and the different stories of the people that he met and the impact that he made and that they made on him. And it's a really beautiful story. It's really interesting, amazing artwork, great storytelling. You got to be checking out Monarch, one of my favorite books out right now. All right, we have IDW's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue #140. Got that Kevin Eastman variant. I wish he was doing wraparounds, but I think he's had a 140 issue streak on covers right now, and probably he doesn't have the time to do wraparounds, but I love the Kevin Eastman variant on here. Now, I have not been reading Armageddon Game or a lot of the stuff leading up. I'm still reading some of the Mirage stuff back in the day, so the IDW stuff is a little bit over my head still at the moment, but I wanted to jump in here because my understanding is we're out, and this is the beginning of a new story arc. So how new reader friendly is it? I would say that it's not very new reader friendly if that's what you were getting into like myself. I will say that you will recognize a lot of the characters, obviously, a lot of the turtles, although their art style is vastly different than I am seeing inside of like the Mirage run right now. So they're a little bit elongated, a little bit thinner than I'm used to seeing them. So I had to kind of like think about that every single time I saw this. But are all the characteristics, all the personalities the same as what we're used to seeing? Yeah, pretty much. Absolutely. Raph is always pissed off about stuff. Michelangelo always wants some kind of pizza. And the other two, Donatello and Leonardo, are kind of walking around just trying to keep the peace and, figure out what the next plan is and everything else. And so we get a lot of familiar tones and personalities, but the overall story was a little bit weird because there's a lot of like new characters and new things that have happened over the last 140 issues, if you could imagine. And since I don't have that familiarity, it's a little bit weird to me personally. But we're going to jump in right here. We're going to keep reading it. We're going to see what's going on. Cool little cliffhanger at the end, which leads to an amazing cover for the next issue. So we're going to see how TMNT plays out. Let me know if you've been reading the IDW run for a long time and then you read this one. What did you think? Let us know down below. Next, we have from Opus Comics, we have Frank Frazetta's Mothman issue number 1. The first thing I thought about was that Department of Truth Mothman issue, which made no sense at all to me. And it was like, okay, cool concept, but like, it was very much Department of Truth and I was over it. This book is like the exact opposite. It has so much humor in here, and the humor is actually delivered by the Mothman himself, who crash lands on Earth and basically finds himself in the middle of like this Hatfield and McCoy situation where these rivaling families in the country are blaming each other for all these things, and they're basically on the hunt trying to find any excuse to like kill the other members of the family. And then we have our cool little Mothman guy trying to just do whatever he can do to stay safe, stay in the shadows, and when he's seen, he has to get the hell out of there. So very cool book. This was better than I thought it was going to be, for sure. It was very funny, and I'm excited. Plus these covers are awesome too. Some of the covers coming up, spectacular. So Mothman, it's actually really funny, and I enjoyed it a lot. What'd you think? Next book we had was from Oni Press. We have Zeno or Zino. I still haven't figured out how to say that one. Correct me down below in the comments. We have Chris Corden. We have Nick Cagnetti. We have Melissa Flores. We have all kinds of people on this book, and it was pretty cool. There's actually, 3 different short stories inside of here. First off, I love that cover. That was such a weird, trippy cover. I had to get that one. There's some other ones in there as well. The first short story was really interesting. It was about this guy in the future who gets these like ocular implants. He's blind and he finally can see due to the surgery, and it's like an experimental surgery. But what he ends up seeing are like these weird organisms and things like that in the world that nobody else can see because he's been enhanced to see certain things. And he starts freaking out at night by like these weird alien weird parasite things that actually presumably put you to sleep that we can't see in reality, but he's freaking out because he can actually see them. And there's a lot of that stuff around, and it actually drives him mad and ends up like ruining his life and ruining his relationships and things like that. So I was like, that's actually a really cool concept. It needs to be expanded on, I think. The second story in here is actually called Rabbit Trap, and it's set in 1963. There's this new family moving into this very like cookie cutter kind of a neighborhood, and the neighbor they're moving into is like a big conspiracy theorist. You gotta watch out for the commies. They're everywhere kind of a dude. And he actually gets brainwashed by this alien neighbor who's set to Earth to kind of take over everything. And he had a hunch that these guys were up to no good, and his hunch was right. And there's used some pretty funny, hilarious little tactics to brainwash this guy essentially and use him to do their bidding. So, beware of anybody out there. Second story was about like this war happening in the future where they're raising pods of people, something like that. And this one rogue agent or soldier or something like that actually went out to sacrifice herself to save this pod of children. And like that story didn't really resonate exactly with me too much. The art style was pretty cool though, and I did like that. But overall, I felt kind of lost in the story about exactly what is going on, so I didn't really pay too much attention about that one. And then actually the fourth story in here is about maybe like this gamer, this like Twitch gamer, really popular one, goes to this company who's has this experimental gaming system that's basically an implant inside of your head, like an augmented reality kind of thing, and he actually starts freaking out. He kind of wakes up from this procedure in a way, starts freaking the hell out, doesn't exactly know what's real and what's not real, thinks it was big dream state, and he gets hunted down by the authorities. And actually this chip or this whatever they implanted in him is like making him go insane and like claw it out of his own body, and he ends up taking it a little bit too far towards the end. So that was a pretty cool story too, but I really want more of that story number 1 with the guy with the implants who can see creatures around that nobody else can see. That was a really cool idea. Expand on that one. And then the last book I read this week was from Ahoy Comics. We have Second Coming Trinity from Mark Russell, issue number 3. Now this book is incredibly good. It's like every issue that comes out, it just gets better and better, I think. Mark Russell right now is probably my favorite writer of active books going on right now. He's got some amazing stuff out. He's done some really cool things over the last year or two, and this is no exception to that at all. This book is really awesome because we have basically like a Superman character who has a child, and the child's actually being babysat by Jesus, like the actual Jesus. God is in this book as well. He's pretty much fed up with humanity at this point. Like, he has no obligation to the success or whatever, the happiness of this species he's created, essentially. He's like, I created the chromosomes to make trillions and trillions of variations or whatever it is, and like, they're on their own. They got to figure things out, and I've given them some things along the way. And Jesus here, he's actually like playing the shepherd in a way, and it kind of goes back into his childhood 2,000 years ago in Nazareth, and it's exploring how maybe he was like abusing his powers when he was younger, very much like the Son of God would, I suppose, in here, but he's doing it in a very humorous kind of a way, ways that we haven't heard of before. And I think it's pretty cool how he can like raise people from the dead even, or, eliminate people's mouths, things like that. He can kind of get his way. He's actually a child with this godly power, and he's abusing it a little bit inside of here until he meets this woman and he has a conversation with her about like, hey, what is your legacy going to be? Who are the people you should be helping right now? Maybe it's the people who have nothing. Maybe it's the bastards out there who really need somebody like you to help them. And so he kind of gets back on the path in a weird way. After having this conversation, it was really cool to see this play out because you can see like the child abusing power in this kid. And obviously he had some mentorship and things like that along the way to kind of hone in his path. And we get to see it in here. There's some really cool scenes in here too, almost like creepy or horrific scenes in here. Like this little boy who's actually pronounced dead essentially. And he wakes up and he goes over there and wakes this child up. And basically he's like, he probably just tripped on a snake. And they're like, no, he's dead. And he wakes him up and he goes, tell him you tripped on a snake. I tripped on a snake kind of stuff. It's really cool humor. I like it a lot. This book is awesome. You got to check it out. All right, guys, that's all I read this week. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know down below in the description what you read and what your favorite books of the week were. And as I mentioned before, the sponsor of this video is JW Storytelling's Kickstarter. Go down below in the description. You'll find a link to the Kickstarter down there. But thanks again for watching. Like, subscribe, share, hit the bell notification to be alerted of future videos. I'll see you all down below in the comments.